The first slide is credits to the team. I and Stephan, we are not the only one working on this research, so this is our entire team, and we actually try to do what we preach. So we work collaboratively, and we do all the research from the very beginning, from the idea to this very presentation was done by all of those people that you see on the slide. And yes, the point that has been made already by the two presenters, we go beyond the headlines. We want to dig deeper into what we can find about coercion, how it looks like, how can we interpret its different dimensions and domains, and that's why we make our work evidence-based. So we start with looking into the scholarship on this topic. How salient is it? What are the people that write on this topic actually write about? Is there a collaboration between the scholars that claim to be Russia-Ukrainian relations expert? And for that, we used two major academic databases. We try to use the new ones that are also available, but they are not fully compatible with the bibliometric tools that we are using. We are working on that, and hopefully, maybe even by the time we publish the paper, we will integrate them too. But we looked at Scopus and Web of Science, and we were really surprised by how little academic attention this topic has. You see the queries that are quite broad. They include all variations that were tested, that we hoped would help us get all the papers published on this topic, but we got about 70 of them in each of the datasets. So and if we look of the interest to this topic over the years, we see a pretty intuitively understandable peak, which is around 2015. The interest is going down, but it's not as low as it was in the beginning. So the interest to this academic topic is obviously growing, but the number of the articles published and book chapters, reports from the conferences is really low. We also looked at collaboration, and we did the similar type of research for a different project. We looked at Russian assertiveness over a different time period, and we actually compared the collaboration in different fields, and it was amazing to see how low the number of co-authors for a single article is in our field. So in field of social science, political science, international relations, compared to hard sciences, to natural sciences, to especially medicine. So we see that the average number of authors is actually 1, 2, in some cases, and we have a really low number of co-authors of the maximum co-authors for the article. If in other sciences we can have up to 10 people doing research, which actually increases the quality, it brings different perspectives. Here we have a really low number of people working together on an article. Then we put the articles we downloaded into a bibliometric software called SiteSpace to look into the topics that those articles cover. This is a graph showing the co-citations of those 140 articles, and you can see the topics that were extracted by this software automatically, so those labels were not given by us. And we see some really interesting topics that this dataset covers. The first one is obvious because it was the query. The second one is also obvious and understandable, but we also see a cluster of articles, for example, on Russian messianism, on managing distrust, and if we had the time to discuss all of those clusters, there are some really interesting ones too. Besides doing the bibliometric work, looking at how important this topic is in an academic setting, we looked at a number of different data sets that measure coercion, that can help us measure coercion. For example, we looked at the foreign bilateral influence capacity index dataset. It's a unique collection of different datasets, for example, from World Bank, International Monetary Fund, and other sources merged into one. And you can see these metrics showing the indicators that are used for this dataset. And what we noticed looking into this data for the last decade is that Russia's influence on Ukraine is going down. It's not going down significantly because of obvious reasons, but the trend is still visibly downwards. And even more interesting one is how dependent is Ukraine on Russia. We see the dependence is also going down. And recently, the dependence of Ukraine on Russia is actually lower than, for example, Moldova, and obviously much lower than Belarus or Romania. We looked at event datasets, a large dataset that consists of event data. In our data warehouse, we have all of those. So GDELT, 2 versions, and several others that cover different time periods and have a huge number of articles. So what the event dataset is, it's a coding of the news articles in such a way that it has triples, starting with a source actor, then the event and the target, so who does what to whom. The articles that come online on a large number of whitelisted, pre-selected sources all over the world, they are coded like that, and the event gets a specific code. Yes, it's done automatically. It's extracted, coded automatically, and every specific event is deduplicated also and is given a particular code so we can filter it. This is like how our work process looks like. We look at all data sets and we use those moments where we see that the different data sets coincide in their findings, because this is big data, so it has some inconsistencies, and we use only those events that, like here on the slide, you can see the peaks, they coincide, so we can trust that this is reliable. We looked at the last decade of Russian assertiveness in Ukraine. We see the peaks that are true for both rhetorical and factual assertiveness, so the actions that Russia took against Ukraine, and also the words. So the verbal assertiveness is also present there. And we also compared this to 2 decades, so starting from 2000, and it's clearly visible that the number of events has grown significantly. And while we had some peaks before, now the peaks are much more visible, and the number of events grown significantly. Besides that, we also looked at Google Trends, a very good tool to see what people are searching. We compared 2 types of searches with v Ukraine and na Ukraine, and we saw that in more peaceful times, let's call it like that, the most searches were done with v Ukraine, but when the situation was more dynamic, the number of searches with na Ukraine increased significantly. And this contradicts actually to our findings from the Russian government publications. So it's the same query na Ukraine, but we see that usually Ukraine was used more. But then in 2014, the number of uses in government publications of Ukraine decreased significantly and stays very low. So now Ukraine is used mostly in the government publications. We also scraped the speeches of Russian presidents. This is not for the last decade, unlike the previous slides. This is the entire content from the Kremlin website. So we scraped all the speeches of all Russian presidents that were published on the website. We had over 10,000 of them, and we filtered, because many of them are domestic, so we filtered only those having Ukraine inside as a word. And we did a topic modeling. So this is how our topic model looks like. And we looked closer at some of the topics. So for example, topic number 2 is devoted to Ukraine, and it has many words that are quite positive. So collaboration, agreement, union, working together, all things like that. Well, it does cover a larger period of time, but it's still very interesting that those speeches are combined together. And then we see a cluster that has Crimea, and it's very oriented towards development, construction, a church. So it's about building the infrastructure in Crimea. We also did the same for Russian state media, and we found some interesting clusters. So this is on Ukraine. It's actually about Ukraine, war, conflict, and the one that is also on Ukraine, but those clusters are very close together. It's about more like soft power tools. So it talks about festivals, Ruski Mir, and church again. So all those things that we usually talk to when we think of Russian Mir. We looked through the elite and public surveys to see what is the public and elite opinion on the different things. So this is the elite survey, and we took different Levada public opinion polls. Some of them were conducted annually, but most of them more frequently, and with some of them even every month. So if we look at Russian elite survey, the elites were asked what do they think of Russian annexation, and obviously the prevailing opinion that it was not a violation of international law, but we still see a small number of those who responded in a different way, who said that it was a violation or that hesitated. And I'll go very quickly through the next few slides. When we broke down these findings for some demographics, and when you see green, it's good. So we see that some representatives of elite do believe that it was not a right thing to do. The public opinion polls have a different view, and so the main takeaways from this research is that there is really little academic interest in this topic. It's growing, and we hope that there would be more research on this. Ukraine dependence on Russia is decreasing. It's not decreasing significantly, but the trend is visible. There is the elite, Russian elite is not cohesive. There are some groups inside elite that are starting to shift their opinion. Those groups are mostly younger, and interestingly, those groups are working in executive branch, so which was a surprising finding for us. So not only business or media, but also some that are not that categorical. Thank you.